So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Winters Quarter Visitor Center. That's in Winters Quarter in Omaha, Nebraska. And it takes you the history in Nauvoo. Then it takes you through how they planned they actually planned quite a ways ahead to do the Exodus, and they had to move their house. They had to move faster than they expected, but they had still prepared quite a bit of stuff to do. So they also talk about that's the route from Nauvoo to Winter Quarters. So Nauvoo is on the right, Winter Quarters is on the left. It shows the route and how they went. So in the first group was Brigham Young and some of the leaders of the church, and they gathered in Canesville, and the church leadership was reorganized, and Brigham Young was voted in as the prophet. This is depicting William Clayton writing the song that we all know, All Is Well. This shows all the settlements in the area, and it shows you when you light it up. It shows you Winter Quarters and all the different settlements that the members had set up. This is a map showing Winter Quarters itself. What they did when they got here is they got here they left Nauvoo in the spring, in February, and so they got here sometime about 3 months later. I think it took them, because what they were doing at the same time as they were moving is they were building the trails, building bridges, and improving the trails so that because they knew a lot of people would come after them. So Brigham Young instructed them to prepare the trail. When they got here, they realized that they couldn't get to the mountains that year. So they settled into Winter Quarters and built, I think, around 500 cabins. And there was also, I think, 82 mud houses, like basically earthen houses. This is a replica of one of the log cabins that they built. I'll try to show you inside, but it's pretty dark in there. We'll see if it works out. So this is the inside of one of the cabins, and it shows you where they slept. A couple of beds. So once they had arranged all the cabins, this town actually looked really nice. It was very well organized, laid out really well. And those cabins were set up for them to spend the winter in, and then for the people who came after them to stay in and prepare for their trek across the mountains. Let's remember that most of the people who went through did not have the issues that we've covered in the Willie and Martin companies. Most of them, their trek went well. However, this first winter in Winter Quarters, about 1 in 12 people that were there passed away because of the hardships that they had. They were very sick. They were sick from the proximity of the marshes and all that stuff, and the mosquitoes and things that happened at that time. This is some of the exhibits that show some of the things that they had set up. This here depicts the wheel and the odometer that I think it's William Clayton that developed this odometer. I read somewhere that he wasn't the one that invented it, but he adapted it, or it says here that he invented it, but I read somewhere else that he didn't. Yep. Okay. Okay, pieces going down to the distribution center and gift shop. So this shows that they planned the immigration very well. It wasn't bedlam or disorganized or whatever. They had the ones that went before made very accurate recording of the route, how long it took, where to go, all the landmarks like Chimney Rock and Independence Rock and all those places were all marked and measured, so people knew how long it took to get from one to the other. This TV here shows you over the years how many pioneer trucks went through and how many people went through and how they did. Later in the 1800s, I think it's 1869, don't quote me on this, I don't remember at all, the trek ended up being done by train. So with these wagons and the handcart, this handcart here is actually loaded, and we could pull it a little bit and you can tell how heavy it is, and it's not easy to pull by yourself for sure. However, in the late 1800s or later in the 1800s, people could do the trek by train. So what took 3 months by wagon and by handcart took 3 days once the train went to Salt Lake City. Also, people at first took sail ships across the ocean, but later on in the 1800s, there were steamships that we developed, so they would cross the ocean in 10 days. So actually, people used to be able to move to Salt Lake City from the British Isles or Europe, where they came from, and do the trip much faster than was done before. This, by the way, is the replica of one of the ships that took the most LDS people across the ocean. Over 10,000 used this ship over the years. And we watched a video, of course, there's always a video presentation, and they told us that while there was a storm on one of the ships, one of the ship captains told everybody, yeah, we're going to take on some water and everything, but as long as there's Mormons on board, we know the ship is going to make it, because it always does when there's Mormons. And then the exhibits ends by telling people about Salt Lake City and how they built a temple in Salt Lake. This is a nice painting downstairs in the visitor center that shows the route and all the stops that they took. And I think this is the first trek across. So them going all the way across. And you'll recognize some of these landmarks, having seen them on our trip. There is Chimney Rock, there's Scott Bluff that we saw yesterday, Fort Laramie, and Devil's Gate. I don't think we saw Red Buttes. And that's basically where we started. And that goes on to Salt Lake City. This is the original cemetery for winter quarters, where all the people that died that winter were buried. Many children, about half of the people who passed away were children, because of course of the illness. And so there's a few grave markers. Some of them are not there anymore. A lot of them are not there anymore. And you will notice that the winter quarters temple is actually right next to the cemetery. It's on the grounds, on the same ground as the cemetery. On the cemetery is a statue depicting the pioneers losing a loved one, and then all the names of the people who are buried here. Now, if you're one of those people who has church ancestry, and one of your ancestors or relatives was buried here, there is a map that you can have in the visitor center, and it tells you where each person is buried so that you can find them in the cemetery, because of course there's not a whole lot of markers. And then here's the temple again next to the cemetery. As most places that the church maintains, it's extremely well maintained and manicured. I'll end this video by giving you a nice view of the winter quarters temple taken from the cemetery. that ties in the ordinances for the dead that are in the cemetery, which I'm sure have all been completed. And till next time.